Welcome, first of all, to our program this evening. This is, as you can see, this is part of a series on time management. Tonight's topic will be client handling and management. For those of you watching on YouTube, the other two parts are on my YouTube channel. The first part is called Time Management, simply enough, and part two is called Delegation. How to delegate effectively. This is the third and last part of the three-part series where we talk specifically about client handling and client management, which is an essential skill, especially for those of you in service businesses, consulting, law, accounting, any kind of professional service. Client handling is something you do every day. Some of the topics I talk about on my YouTube channel are things that I only do maybe once or twice a year, but this is something I do virtually every day, often several times a day. And it is an art. It is absolutely not a science. So without any further ado, okay, now those of you who didn't know I was a lawyer, here's my proof. Okay? We always tell you what we're not going to do before we tell you what we're actually going to do. The one important thing here, I know, especially during the Q&A, some of you guys do have legal and tax questions. We are going to get into some legal issues in this program this evening. But please understand there's a very big difference between giving legal information and giving legal advice. I can certainly tell you, well, here's what the law says about X, Y, and Z, and I will do that before the evening is over, but I'm really not in a position to give any of you one-on-one advice as to what you should do in a certain situation. For that, quite frankly, you'd have to hire me as your attorney and maybe pay me a little bit of money, not too much, but a little bit. But that's what I would need in order to be able to give you one-on-one advice. Nothing that I'm going to say tonight should be construed as legal or tax advice. There is another disclaimer, too, that I want to do, which is not on this slide at all, and that is, I wish I could say that I was the world's leading authority on client management, but I'm really not. Just like I'm not really a leading authority on any of the stuff I talk about on this channel. What I'm going to be talking about are some things that work for me. These are some of the tricks that I've picked up in the course of 38 years of being a lawyer and working with somewhere between 15 and 20,000 clients. Obviously, your situation may be a little bit different. Some of you may have tricks that I don't know about. But this is what works for me, and that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. I wish this is not a comprehensive how to manage your clients type of program. Okay, let's talk about clients now. First of all, let's talk about some obvious things. Clients. Can't live with them, can't live without them. Pure and simple. You cannot run a business without clients or customers. A business without clients, we call a hobby. Now, the IRS has some very specific rules about what's a hobby and what's a business, but forget all those rules. If you are doing something that nobody is paying you to do, that's a hobby. The key difference between a hobby and a business is that somebody pays you to do it. And let's face it, business would be a lot more fun without clients and customers, right? We lawyers actually have a saying. The practice of law would be amazing if it weren't for the clients. It really would be. It's so intellectually gratifying and satisfying, but there's all these pesky little people I have to get paperwork done for every day, and they're the ones who make my life tough sometimes. Okay, second thing, they are your boss. Okay, and this is something where I have to burst a lot of bubbles. I love entrepreneurs. I love working with people starting their businesses, but every time I represent a new client and I ask, well, why do you want to run your own business? Why do you not want to go work for a corporation or something like that? Why do you want to do something on your own? Oh, I really want to be my own boss. Well, I hate to burst your bubble about this, but you're never your own boss. Even if you're doing like I do, I work out of my spare bedroom. I am as solo get. I don't have a staff. I don't have partners. I don't have associates. I don't have admins. I don't have assistants, paralegals. I don't have a dog. It's just me and my PC. Most of the time I am naked. I should share that with you. I work out of my home. Well, actually, I'm wearing, a bathrobe and bunny slippers. Not quite naked, but most of the time. Sometimes I do talks for lawyers, and I'll say, and I'm looking for associates, that kind of thing. It grosses them out terribly. But the thing is, when you're in business for yourself, you still have a boss. And it's just that the boss doesn't live with you. The boss isn't in the office with you 24/7, the way they did when you worked for corporate America. You don't do what you want to do. You do what they want you to do, because they're only going to pay for that. And I got to burst your bubble. No one pays you to do stuff that's fun or interesting or exciting. That's the stuff they want to do. Okay? What they want you to do is the stuff that they don't want to do because it's boring, because it's technical. I mean, and by the way, I am no exception to this rule. Okay? I call myself a small business lawyer. What does a small business lawyer do most of every day? Answer: contracts. I am drafting them. I am reviewing them. I'm drafting letters. I'm drafting emails. That's what I do. And clients pay me a lot of money for that. Why? Because it's boring. It is boring as crap. It is technical. Okay? It is absolutely stifling. And you know what? It's also scary. Because if I get something wrong in a contract, if I say thou shalt instead of thou shalt not, I can be sued for malpractice. My client could lose their deal, they could lose their business, and that ever happens, I'm going to get sued. Knock on wood, in 38 years it hasn't happened yet, but hey, it could happen, and I live with that every day. When I'm working on a contract for a client, I got one hand on my malpractice insurance policy when I am doing this. And that's something you have to keep in mind too. That's what they're paying you to do, and that's why they pay you good money, because they don't want to do it themselves. Okay. Sometimes too, you got to be careful. Again, you're doing what they want. What if you disagree with the client? What if the client wants to go a particular direction and you don't think that that's a good idea? What happens, especially in my field as a lawyer, when a client refuses to take my advice? Okay, Cliff, I understand what you're saying, but I'm still going to do this anyway, the way I want to do it. How do you deal with that situation? Okay. Sometimes you don't like your clients. In fact, I think it's a bad idea in general to like your clients too much. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should hate them. I'm not saying you should go around snarling at them or whatever, but I think it's kind of helpful if you're emotionally neutral when it comes to your clients, because that makes you more objective in your dealings with them. If you like somebody too much, well, that's when you're going to start cutting corners. We're going to talk about that, clients and friends and how they differ and stuff like that. And by the way, this is just to telegraph something, but one of the points I want you to come away with, if you find yourself disliking your clients too much, it's probably a good idea to get rid of some of them or maybe change professions. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, every client, the third thing you need to know about clients, every client is a potential plaintiff in a lawsuit. The only people who can sue me for malpractice are my clients. No matter how rude and obnoxious I am to the other side in a transaction, unless I actually commit fraud and lie to them, they cannot do anything to me. They cannot sue me for malpractice. The only people who can are my clients, okay? And the only people who can bring an ethics charge against me and go after my license are my clients. Clients are dangerous people. They can take your house away from you. So you've got to treat them with respect and with kid gloves. But you got to be careful too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm sure most of you know it's very important to give good client service. But when you give too good client service, when you're too nice to your clients, what happens? They walk all over you. They want things for free. They want to pay within 90 days rather than 30. They start playing games. Okay, don't get me wrong. Being ethical in business is absolutely essential. Being nice, however, will get you killed. The trick to dealing with clients is to know the difference and be able to walk that fine line between ethical behavior and nice behavior. Okay, so these are 4 inconvenient truths about clients, all of which are true. So, what types of clients do you want? Let's begin at the beginning. Getting the right client is half the battle. Whenever you find yourself having trouble, lots of trouble with your clients, not just the occasional bad apple, but if it's a constant, recurring, chronic problem, part of the problem is that you're not dealing with the right people here. You don't have the right clients for you. Now, don't get me wrong, when people are first starting out, I was the same way when I first started out many years ago. Anything that walks in the door and has a pulse, you say yes to. Now, when you're first getting started, you may not have a choice, quite frankly, but that's not a good long-term strategy. You want to try to get away from that because you really can't please everyone. You really can't. I mean, if I ask any of you who are your customers, your clients, well, anybody and everybody, that's going to be a problem because nobody can spread themselves that thin. I certainly can't. Sooner or later, you learn that there's a certain sweet spot in your clientele. There's a certain type of person that gravitates toward you and that's the person you should be working with. Here's a good exercise. I mean, this sounds silly. Look at your high school yearbook. When you go home, if you can stand to do it, This is one of the most stressful things you'll probably ever do in the next year. But dig out your high school yearbook, wherever it is, in the attic or whatever, and look at the yearbook, and especially look at the people who signed your yearbook, your buddies, your old high school cronies. Look at those people and look at them quickly. And you're going to notice something. If you're like most people, if you're like me, I did this a couple of years ago, and it was amazing. They all look the same. The people who signed my yearbook, they all had a lot of things in common. They weren't just random people. Your friends in high school were not random people. There were certain people who signed your yearbook, and there were certain people who did not sign your yearbook. In my case, some of the people who didn't sign my yearbook were called cheerleaders. Okay, that you can actually laugh. Laughter is okay. We can tolerate that, okay, on the video. No, seriously. I mean, when I was in high school, I actually bore a striking physical resemblance to the young Richard Nixon. Go back and look at photos of Richard Nixon when he was a congressman. Look at my yearbook photo. It's separated at birth. Do you have any idea, ladies and gentlemen, what it was like to go to high school in the late 1960s? 1967 to 71, the whole hippie era, summer of love, flower generation, not only looking like Richard Nixon, but wearing a pocket protector. Do you have any idea what that was like? If you really want to try to understand or psychoanalyze me and figure out where I'm coming from, that was my youth. And that's what I did. Okay, now I look a little bit different. Now I look more like Alan Sherman, for those of you who remember who he was. But that's a little bit, you don't remember who he was. Okay, I didn't think any of you were that old. Okay, but that's the thing. But anyway, but you're going to find, when you look at your friends and whatever, there's a certain kind of people that have bought you in the past. And I make this in all my marketing videos. I make this point too. There's a certain kind of person who gets you. And you should ask yourself, really, who is that person? What do they look like? Who shares your culture, your worldview? Who do you communicate well? They may not look anything like you. I'm not at all suggesting that this is a case of likes attracting. Sometimes your best clients don't look anything at all like you. But there's a certain commonality. You can communicate with them. They get you. You don't have to explain yourself. There's just a natural sympathy or empathy between the two of you, and that's what you're looking for. Find a few minutes and ask yourself, who are those people? And what do they look like? Paint me a picture of that ideal person. And then when you have that, project to the world. Look for those people. Don't just blast your marketing out there looking for everybody. Look specifically for those people. What image do you want to project to the world? I mean, there's an old saying, you can get rich selling BMWs or Yugos, and you can get rich selling Yugos too, but you can't do both. Are you high end or are you low end? It's okay either way, but you got to know. How do you do your marketing? There are certain people who can have a website that looks like it was drawn by their kid. That's okay. If you're in a certain type of business, maybe you're doing a daycare business or something like that, that's a very cute thing to do. Whereas if you're a lawyer, would you ever buy a lawyer who had his kid do his website, his homepage? Of course not. Looks ridiculous. What is your image? What is the image you want to project? What kind of people are you looking? What kind of people have always bought you? What image do you want to project to the world? And then you do your marketing accordingly. So if you go to my website at cliffennico.com, which is the website for my law practice, I have a bunch of them, but this is the one for my law practice, you will see a cost-effective, approachable lawyer for your small business. That's the message that I want to get across to people. I want to let people know that you can afford me and you can talk to me. Now, that excludes a lot of people. There are some people who do not trust a lawyer unless they look like they haven't gone to the bathroom in 10 days. There are some people, and they do not feel comfortable with a lawyer unless you look like that. That's not a good client for me at all. If you do not have a sense of humor, you are not going to do well with Cliff Ennico as your lawyer. I will tell you that right now. And I do that when I meet with you, when I talk to you on the phone, I'm gauging you to see if you're that kind of person. Can I deal with you? Things are going to happen. Can I laugh it off? Here's one of my favorite jokes, and you'll hear it at least twice tonight. Whenever I'm late turning something around for a client, and I'm worried that the client's going to get upset, I send them a short email saying, "Don't worry, you're not being ignored. You're just being prioritized." Now, most people get the humor in that statement. If they don't, I don't want them as a client. Do you see what I'm saying here? That's very important. On social media especially, people judge you by the company you keep. Okay, watch out especially for your LinkedIn profile if you're a professional or a consultant. If I look at who you're linked into and I see there are a bunch of yahoos, I'm going to think that you're a yahoo too. Okay, that's one piece of social media advice your great-grandmother gave you that is still very good. People judge you by the company. I'm always very careful. I'm a little neurotic actually about who I link into on my LinkedIn profile. Even if it's I very rarely will link into somebody that I don't know. I very rarely will do. Now that's probably overly conservative, to be honest with you. And this is not a program on LinkedIn, but I just be very careful who you let in. What's the famous, there's that famous horror novel, that Swedish vampire novel, Let the Right Ones In, right? That's what you want. You only want to let the right people in, not everybody and everybody. Okay, desirable clients, I don't care what business you're in. So who are you looking for? You want people who pay on time, who cooperate and are easy to work with, and will help you build your business via referrals. The best way to grow a service business is through referrals from satisfied customers. I don't care what business you are. If people are not willing to do that, I don't want them as clients. I want them to be my shills, my billboards going forward. I want the world to know, especially online and on social media, what a great lawyer I am. Here are some people you don't want, okay? I don't care what business or profession you're in. There are certain people you never want to have as clients. People who don't know what they're doing and have no money. Okay? By the way, it's a huge underserved demographic. I guarantee that whatever profession, whatever business you're in, if you go out there, within a couple of days, you're going to get a call from somebody who doesn't know what he's doing and has no money. It's huge, right? But nobody wants to serve those people. That's why they're always running around looking for people, because they can't find anybody. Why? Because they don't know what they're doing and they have no money. Okay? Those are people you don't want. Okay? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that all clients have to be rich and millionaires. I don't think that's the case. But you definitely want to make sure that they know what they're doing, at least that they're somewhat basically competent and that they have enough money to pay a reasonable fee. That's all you're asking for here. Here are some people you don't want. Deadbeats, people who don't pay. Obviously, duh. Pugilists, that's another fancy word for boxer. People who fight you and are constantly engaged in a tug of war with them. You can't agree on the time of day, right? That's not a good fit. Phantoms, they hire you and then they disappear. You send them email after email after email after email, and they never respond, okay? Until a year later, when all of a sudden they want something done tomorrow. That's what happens. You know, we call those submarine clients. You know, they go underwater for a while, but all of a sudden they surface with the torpedoes ready to go. You know, that kind of thing. Time vampires, people who just eat the clock. You know, they want to talk about everything under the sun. Okay, I see you're nodding your heads. Do-it-yourselfers, this may not apply to you, but it definitely applies to me in my business. I do not like to work with do-it-yourselfers. Cliff, I'm trying to set up an LLC here, and I just got a question. I'm filling out the form. How do you normally respond to question number 3, you know, box number 3 on the form? I'll pay you for your time, you know, I just want to know the answer. I don't want to get involved with these people because you know what happens? They do it themselves, they screw it up, and they're going to blame you anyway, even if they haven't paid you for it. Okay, that's what happens with do-it-yourselfers. My advice to do-it-yourselfers is, well, you have a choice. Do it yourself. That way, the good news is you can't sue yourself for malpractice in any state that I'm aware of. You cannot sue yourself for malpractice. Now, seriously, and I sometimes say, look, why do you hire a lawyer to do stuff like this? Well, there's 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm going to do it right. Number 1, you don't know if you're doing it right. And by the way, I will tell you something. If you're forming LLCs and corporations using one of the online services, I won't mention names, they always make mistakes. Almost always, especially corporations, they always make mistakes. Okay, litigators. A litigator is a courtroom lawyer, somebody who likes to fight battles all the time. That's somebody you don't want. You don't want, while all clients are potential plaintiffs, you don't want somebody who's a serial plaintiff. Okay, whenever I get a call, here I get this call at least once a month. Cliff, you know, I've got to tell you something. I've never had good experiences with lawyers. I've had 3 lawyers in the last year. They all were a bunch of idiots, but I'm looking at your website. I'm hearing some good things from other people. I think you're the exception that proves the rule. I want to work with you. Do I want this person as a client? Hell no. Okay, let's face it, not all lawyers are geniuses. I can see where people occasionally have issues with them. But if you've had 3 lawyers in 1 year, I got to think that that's more you than them. I'm sorry. That the odds are just too great there that you happened to pick 3 attorneys, all of whom were idiots. I just can't believe that. And if I know them, I will sometimes call them. And I will ask, by the way, oh man, don't go near that. That's what happens. Trust your gut. Your gut is often smarter than your brain. If a client, I got to tell you something. Whenever a client of mine has a bad experience with somebody, somebody cheats them or sues them or does something bad, whenever they call me, one of the first things they say, it's almost the very first thing that comes out of their mouth, Cliff, I knew it. I knew this person was going to be a problem. They know. Your gut's very well tuned. If someone comes on like a wackadoodle, don't do business with them. You are not required to take every client that comes in the front door. If you see that someone is likely to be a problem, and if they act off or whatever, you can send them elsewhere. In fact, you know who you send them to? Send them to your competition. No, seriously, if I really think that you call me and I really think you're a wackadoodle, well, you know what? This is the kind of work I do, Joe. Yeah, you're right. But you know what? I'm under deadline to get my new book done. I'm going to be doing that for at least the next couple of months, and I know you can't wait that long. Here's this other attorney in town here. His name is, Joe Blow. Give him a call. He's well known. I know you'll have a good experience with him. Who am I sending it to? My worst enemy in the local bar. I want him to have wackadoodles for clients. And by the way, if that sounds just overly cynical, by the way, that's part of life too. Why should you get stuck with a wackadoodle for a client? Especially, trust your gut. You know when a client is going to be a problem. Learn to trust that. Okay. Your contracts make good clients. Good contracts make good clients. Okay. What do I mean here? A lot of times when you have problems with clients, it's because your contract allowed that to happen. And that is something you want to avoid, okay? Take time out. Try not to do business with invoices and purchase orders. Get a little contract with every client that you do business with. It doesn't have to be a 10-page monstrosity with witnesseth and whereas clauses. It can just be a little 2-page letter. You'd be surprised how much damage you can do in a 2-page letter. A lot of the contracts that I do for people are letter form agreements that are less than 3 pages long. And there's a lot of stuff in there. Here's what you need. First of all, a detailed description of your services. What exactly are you being paid for? And exceptions, things that you don't do. So for example, in my standard retainer letter, I have a clause, I do not do litigation or patent work of any kind. That's in every one of my retainer letters because I don't. It's that simple. I don't want anybody thinking that I'm going to be happy. And it happens sometimes. A client will hire me to buy a business and we do the due diligence and all of a sudden there's a patent in there that has to be assigned. I don't know how to do that. So I got to get somebody else to come in and help with that one little piece of that puzzle because the client wants that patent. That sometimes happens in my world, okay? Make sure your retainer agreement is clear. I don't want the client thinking that I'm going to spend all-nighters figuring out how to do a patent assignment with the patent office. I'm not going to do that. A provision discouraging project creep. Make sure you got something in there that says, in the event that you need additional services, that will be the subject of a separate agreement and a separate fee. Always make sure that's in there. Because especially those of you who are marketing consultants, you know how this goes. The client changes their mind 10 times when they come on board. Okay, you want the agreement to say, I'm going to do this and this, but if you need that, hold it, that's a separate deal. Well, I may be able to do it, but I need more money for that. Make sure they know that. If you're a contractor doing stuff, okay, that's, in the event that there are punch list items, if there's add-ons, those will be the subject of a separate work order. Okay, contractors, look at construction contract. Contractors are very good at this. This is what I'm going to be doing, but any additional work will be the subject of an amendment, of a separate work order. Do that. You can do that too. You don't have to be a contractor to do that. Anybody can do it. The fees you will charge, duh. But here's the big, an upfront retainer. Always get money up front. Always get money up front. Please, always get money up front. Don't ever take on a big project and don't get any money up front. Where you're not going to send your first bill for 30 days. Always get money up front. That's always a good thing to do. Number one, it shows the client that you're serious. It also sends the signal that this is a business relationship and that you expect to get paid. If it does nothing more than that, it does it. And what do I mean by an early termination fee? In most of our fields, it's not possible to get a non-refundable upfront retainer. I mean, if you can, God bless you, go for it. But most clients balk when you say that the retainer is non-refundable. But it's perfectly okay to put a statement in there saying, My retainer is thus and such. I will apply it against hours worked. If you terminate the agreement within the first 30 days, half of it is non-refundable, half of the retainer. That's perfectly okay and valid. Do something like that, because people do that. They hire you, you get all geared up, you get ready to go, and all of a sudden they pull the plug because they found somebody they like better. They do that. In that case, you shouldn't be just stuck with the 1 hour that you were going to bill them. Put a little penalty in there for early termination. That's really what I should have called this. Not an early termination fee, but an early termination penalty. I know marketing consultants who say, if I have not heard from you for 3 months, your upfront retainer is forfeit. I don't give it back. It becomes non-refundable at that point. And believe me, that encourages the client to call you on a regular basis. If nothing else, will do that. They don't want to lose that money. Notice I have this next one in capital letters: when your fees are due and payable. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to say this. I look at over 200 contracts, service contracts a year in virtually every field. And I cannot tell you how many times I see a contract that is crystal clear about the work that's going to be done, crystal clear about the fees that are going to be charged, but doesn't say anything about when fees are due. That's the most important thing. Or if it does, it says something like, fees will be due upon completion or upon the client's satisfaction with the goods or services. Oh, when is a client ever satisfied with anything? Any web people here? Anybody here doing websites and stuff? When is a website ever finished? It's never finished, right? You gotta, seriously, your contract, if you do nothing else in your contract, say, unless we mutually agree otherwise in writing, payment is due within X days of invoice date. Boom, you've done your job. I swear to you, 60 to 70% of the contracts I look at in a given year do not have that language in there. And when you don't put that language in there, when does the client pay? When the client damn well wants to pay. At that point, you have given them an open license to play games with you, is what you have done. If your contract is not clear, believe it or not, I can live with ambiguity in contracts. I'm not one of these lawyers who insist that everything be nailed down 10 ways till Tuesday. I can live with some ambiguity in a contract, but I want to know exactly how much my client is charging and when is payment due. That's it. You can change it. You can give a client a little deal, maybe let them be 5 days late or something if you want to, but the contract has to be clear as to when payment is due. Otherwise, you have no right to go after them, right? How can you sue someone for a payment that's not even due? No judge will look at you favorably if you ever try to do that. Okay, another statement that we need to put in. Interest at 12% per annum will accrue on past due payments. There's a little legal tip. But can you charge interest on overdue payments? Yes or no? How many people say yes? How many people say no? Believe it or not, the legally correct answer is you cannot charge interest on overdue payments unless you warn the customer up front that you will do so. Believe it or not, that's considered usury in most states, charging an excessive rate of interest. You can only charge interest on an overdue debt if you tell them you are going to do so. I look at a lot of pre-printed invoice forms and stuff like that, and I don't see that language a lot of the times. Make sure it's in there. 12% per annum is sort of where the market is right now. If you look at some older contracts, you'll see 18%, but frankly, I think anything over 12% risks being usury, I think. If you're going to do it, make sure that language is in there, because otherwise you legally cannot charge interest. Now, don't get me wrong. If a client, is overdue, you can say at that time, from this point going forward, interest will be due. You can do it at that point, but then you've just lost a couple of months of interest there. Always have that in the contract up front that you'll do that. A cooperation clause. This is a clause that says you will cooperate, you will return phone calls and emails promptly. There's some standard language for this. You will respond to me. You will provide me with information that I request within a reasonable period of time. I always throw that clause in my contracts. I want the client to know that this is a 50-50 relationship here. I'm not just taking their stuff and coming out with a perfect document at the closing. I'm going to ask them questions, and I need them to provide me with input over time. And I want to know that they're on board. Otherwise, I will terminate the contract, and maybe I will glom a piece of their upfront fee. I want them to know that. I need cooperation here. I can't have any phantoms in my life, who disappear on me. Warranty disclaimers, okay? Don't get me wrong. It's perfectly okay to say in a contract, I will perform these services in a good and workmanlike manner or in a good and professional manner. That's perfectly okay. But you also need to put in language in there, which I do in all my retainer agreements, that say, but I cannot guarantee that you will be satisfied. I cannot guarantee that you will achieve a particular result, even if I know what it is in advance. Let's put it this way. If I form an LLC for you, well, I guarantee that I'll do it right. Of course I will. It's what you're paying me to do. But I can't guarantee that you're going to have a happy life or a successful business or that somebody won't sue you. Somebody may sue you. I mean, I actually got a call about a year ago from somebody, hey, Cliff, you screwed up. What do you mean I screwed up? I didn't screw up. You formed an LLC? Right, I formed your LLC. Well, I still got sued. Somebody's suing me, and they're trying to get to all my personal assets. They sued my LLC, and they're suing me personally. I said, well, dude, that has nothing to do with how well your LLC was formed. I hate to tell you that. Forming an LLC does not mean you will not get sued in life. It just means you have some protection and some a defense in case somebody does. Let me tell you something. You know what a contract is from my perspective, from a lawyer's perspective? A contract is a ticket to a courtroom. That is all it is. It's a good thing to have because if you have it, you stand a much greater chance of winning that lawsuit. But if there are people out there, I really hate to burn your breakfast here, but there are people out there, you can have the most perfect contract in the world, they'll sign it and they'll still try to play games with you. There are people like that out there, okay? Now you still get the contract, but it's not an ironclad suit of armor that will protect you against everything. So you want to have some language in there that says, I do not guarantee perfection. I do not guarantee that you will be happy. I'll do the best I can. I will listen to you and I will do my work in a professional, workmanlike manner, but that's all you're getting, okay? Caps on your liability, limitations on liability. There should always be a clause in your contract that says that, if you are unhappy and it is my fault, I did screw up, all I got to do is give you your money back and that's it. You can't take my house. That's it. That there should always be a clause. Now, sometimes the courts don't enforce those. I will warn you about that. Some courts don't like those, but if it's not in the contract to begin with, you don't have a chance. If you do go to court and a judge likes you, having that limitation of liability is a perfect thing to have in there. Okay, well, the good news is, Mr. Plaintiff, you do have a case. Cliff Ennico did make a mistake here. The bad news is, though, you got this limitation of liability clause in there. All you're getting back is the $500 you paid him. Sorry, boom, next case. That's it. It's a good thing to have. If it's not, don't get me wrong, it may not be enforceable, but if it's not in there, the judge, you're making it a lot harder for the judge to help you. Make it easy for the judge to rule in your favor. Okay, put that thing in there. And then last but not least, an escape hatch if the client turns out to be a jerk. This contract may be terminated by either party with or without cause upon 15 days prior written notice to the other party. Boom. That's it. That means if you are dealing with a wackadoodle, all you got to do is pull the plug, tolerate him for 15 days, and you're on with your life again. That's it. Okay, always have an escape hatch clause. Never sign a contract, lock yourself into a contract for a year or 2 years or 5 years unless you can absolutely help it. I mean, we're not talking leases here. Leases always do that. But we're talking about things like consulting contracts. Try to avoid this contract shall continue for a period of 1 year and thereafter may be terminated. You're locking yourself in for a year with that language, okay? Get out in 30 days. Now, don't get me wrong. They can also terminate you in 30 days. All you have now is a 30-day contract. But if things aren't really working out, you don't really care about that too much. That's up to you to make sure the relationship is one that they don't want to terminate. Okay, so that's the contract stuff. Now, managing client expectations. Successful client handling is all about communication. Frequent, often. Clients hate surprises, especially regarding fees. One of the surest ways to get a client to hate you is to send them a bill that they are not expecting or in an amount that they are not expecting. I said I was going to do it for $1,000. Here's a bill for services rendered, boom, 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 $5,000. That's going to get me a very angry phone call and maybe worse. Okay? Clients hate surprises. If you do go over a fee estimate, we all do it sometimes, tell the client before you send the bill. Tell the client, and preferably before you do the additional, hey, by the way, just to let you know, in fact, I had it happen just today. A client was buying a business, and I gave him a quote for doing the deal, like I always do, but it turns out now we got the due diligence stuff this morning, and the seller has 3 separate companies for this business. Now that means that in order to do the deal the right way, I got to form 3 separate companies for my client and do a mirror of what the seller has. There's just legal reasons for that. So I had to call the client this afternoon and say, by the way, just to let you know, we're going to have to do 3 LLCs instead of 1, and this is what I think the additional cost is going to be. Let them know up front, and then try in an email. I'm not a big fan of email in terms of doing business. I mean, email has a lot of faults, and we all know what they are. But this is one thing that email does very well. Whenever you have to make a quick and dirty change to a contract, you put it in an email and make sure you get a statement back. Okay, Cliff, I'm okay with this. Boom, then you're okay. You got it, okay? Whenever you have to make a change to something, do it via email. You don't have to do a formal amendment to the contract. Just do it via email. That's admissible in evidence in most courts of law in the United States today. Do it that way. Always get the client's buy-in to a difficult decision. Especially those of you who are doing like marketing consulting and things where the deliverables are a little bit more nebulous than they are in my world. This is a very important thing. If you're really not sure what a client wants, don't do what you think is right and hope that they're going to like it. Give them a range of options and get them to buy in. Now, just so you know, for your website, I came up with 3 or 4 different ways we could approach this. Take a look at this. Which of these do any of these coming close to what you think you might want? Oh yeah, well, number 3, I kind of like. Okay, now let's see if we can take number 3 and make that a little bit better. Now you know what to do. I had a web guy years ago who did this to me. A great guy. He was referred by a couple of my clients. I don't think he's still in the business anymore. But great guy. I mean, and he listened to me. He was very good at taking notes. He knew exactly what I wanted to do in terms of my image. But he had this software program that he bought. It was his latest toy, and I think he was looking for an excuse to play with it a little bit. Guys have this issue. Y chromosome people, we have this issue sometimes. Whenever we get a new toy, we're always looking for an excuse to try it out on our clients. And he had gotten this software program that will take your photo and make it into a caricature, like a cartoon app or that kind of thing. All right, so he decided that he was going to take my photo, which I wanted on my website, my web homepage, and do this caricature thing, right? So a week later, I get the sample. I go, okay, Cliff, here's the link to the beta. Take a look at the website, and there's this cartoon of me that made me look exactly like Pee Wee Herman. No way was any client going to take this seriously. So I called him up and said, dude, what's with the cartoon? Oh, man, you look great there. You're terrific. I use this software program. Man, this is great. No other lawyer in Connecticut is doing this. Yeah, I know why, too. I was furious at this guy that he had wasted hours of time doing this cartoon of me without getting me to buy into it. If he had told me up front, hey, I got this thing I want to try. As one of the options for your homepage, let me try this. I would have been okay with it. I would say, well, don't spend a lot of time on it. Let me see what it looks like. I would have bought into that. But he didn't, and now I think he's an idiot that doesn't know what he's doing. Right? Wouldn't that be your conclusion as well? So whenever you're not sure what the client wants, do a range of things and then get them to buy into it. Let them be part of the decision. So that way, if they don't like it at the end, well, wait a minute, you did select number 3. That's why I did that. It was like I wanted to give you sort of a sense of how things could be done differently. I'm happy to go back to number 2, but there's going to be an additional fee. That's the conversation you want to have with them. When a client refuses to follow your advice, and there's another thing here too, this is not on the slide. Every once in a while you get a wimpy client that doesn't want to make decisions. You ever get those people sometimes? I do all the time. Especially the ones, they're not comfortable with negotiation, so they want me to negotiate the business terms as well as the legal documents. Well, that scares the hell out of me. I'm not an investment banker, okay? I'm not trained that way. Now, I'll do it for a client. The rules of ethics permit me to do that, but I always want to get things in writing. Okay. Whenever a client makes a concession, Cliff, yeah, I know you're worried about this, but don't worry, I'm not worried about it. The seller's a good guy. We'll just communicate if there's a problem. Get it in writing. Email is a savior here. Get it back. Okay, this is to show you. I really feel strongly that we really ought to fight harder on this Section 4. But you're saying you're comfortable with that? Okay, yes. But save that. Seriously, even in this digital age that we live in, I still print out emails and put them in file folders. Do it. Seriously, whenever a client goes against your wishes and says, okay, don't worry about that, Cliff, I'm okay with this. Get it in an email and put that in the folder, because you know darn well a year from now things are going to hit the fan, and he's going to say, well, Cliff, why didn't we do this on Section 4? It was in the first draft, but it wasn't in the final document. You told me to take that out. That's why I did it. So shut up. No, I don't say shut up, but, dude, in your face. The reason why, by the way, have you ever tried to back up emails onto a CD-ROM? There are utilities that will do that for you, for permanent storage, but be very careful, because when you use them, it deletes all the headers. So you've got 15,000 emails on a CD-ROM that are all arranged chronologically, but there's nothing to say who the client was, what mattered. You got to go through every one of those 15,000 looking for the 5 smoking gun emails that you need to defend you in court, right? You do not want to pay a young attorney in a law firm 1,000 hours of time going through the emails looking for the ones that are relevant to your case. Seriously, print out the important ones and put them in a file folder. It'll save your life. Last but not least, return client calls and emails as promptly as possible within reason. For those of you who are interested, my time management part 1 video, I actually have several whole slides on this as to how you respond to clients, in what time frame, what is timely performance. So I'm just going to refer you to that other video for that information. These are all free, by the way. Okay, clients versus friends. Okay, it's okay to be friendly in your communications with clients. You obviously don't want to go around snarling at them all, but you need to maintain a professional distance. Friends can get away with things that business relationships cannot get away with. Friends can impose on each other. They can borrow money from each other. Friends do stuff for each other for free, right? You got friends in college. Hey, I got to move my sofa. Can you help me out, this weekend? Okay, you don't charge for that. The guy buys you a beer, right? That's not what you're in business to do. Also, too, if you find yourself getting too close to a client, and this sometimes happens, especially emotionally or romantically, consider referring them to another professional. In the legal profession, we have a code of ethics. It's called the Model Rules of Professional Conduct. And there's a whole section in that set of legal, yes, there are legal rules for lawyers. Are you surprised to hear that there are ethical rules for lawyers, by the way? It's actually a big book. It's about 100 pages long, and we have to commit it to memory, believe it or not. We can lose our licenses if we don't do these things. There's a whole section in there specifically for divorce lawyers when they fall in love with their clients. And it's only for divorce lawyers. I've never understood this. Why is it only divorce lawyers who fall in love with their clients? Is that just a divorce? It must be a cultural thing with matrimonial lawyers. It's only for divorce lawyers, believe it or not. The fact that if they find themselves getting romantically involved, of course, in many cases, it's probably the divorce lawyer who was the cause of the marriage breakup in the beginning. Maybe that was the problem. I just don't know what it is, but it only applies to divorce lawyers. Like, people don't fall in love with their business lawyers or their litigators. I mean, I've got to believe that sometimes happens. Right? But the rule only applies to divorce lawyers, and I've never understood why that is. Anyway, but just be careful. When you find yourself getting too close, it may affect your objective judgment, and you should probably consider. Beware the client also, by the way, who wants you to take equity in their company or that kind of thing. You cannot be an investor and a professional at the same time. That's a very, very difficult thing to pull off. I make it a very strict policy. I never do it. It's not technically unethical, but I just make it a policy never to do it, because I can't make the same. As a lawyer, I sometimes have to kill a deal that would be very profitable for the client because there are legal issues. And that's a hard thing to do if I'm also an investor who would benefit from that transaction being done. It's a very hard thing to pull off. Okay, every once in a while you have a dissatisfied client. No matter how well you manage your clients, some of them are always going to be dissatisfied. Okay, well, the customer is always right, and there is something to that. Those of you who are not from New England, in New England, where I live and where we are doing this program, there's a small chain of grocery stores called Stu Leonard's. It's a small family-owned chain of grocery stores. There's about 5 or 6 of them. In front of each one of these stores is a gigantic granite boulder, and on this boulder is inscribed, they actually chiseled this into the rock, Stu Leonard's 2 rules of customer service. Rule number 1, the customer is always right. Rule number 2, if the customer is ever wrong, reread rule number 1. Okay, that's how they do business, and it's a great way to manage your business. The customer, at the end of the day, is always right. Whenever you argue with a customer, you ultimately lose, no matter what happens. You got to be careful how you argue with a customer. You're not out to win here. You're out to preserve the relationship. And that just means that you have to kind of pull your punches. You can't go at it like a litigator in full heat. You can't do it. Don't cower and hide, though. Address the situation quickly and honestly. Offer to make things right. Have backup for anything you tell the client. Well, wait a minute, now hold it, Joe. Yeah, I know you're upset about this, but just so you know, you told me, I disclosed this to you, and you told me it was okay to do it that way. See, here's your email, on thus and such a date, thus and such a time. This is why you save these things. Okay, oh, okay, I guess I did. Okay, that's usually the end of the discussion. Have backup for anything you tell your client. Consider a fee reduction. I mean, sometimes we all have to eat fees sometimes if the client is important enough, and especially if it is something that was kind of a questionable thing, discretion is the better part of valor. Give a fee reduction. Do not charge for correcting a problem. First of all, you should never charge for correcting a problem that was your fault. I mean, I don't care what your profession is. I think that's just unethical to do that. I mean, if you screw up, eat the time. In fact, I'll tell you a little billing. When we get to billing, I'll tell you a little trick, by the way, which really impresses clients when you do it. Remind me to do this. But here's the key. Don't admit liability, especially in writing or in an email. If a client accuses you of something that could potentially lead to a lawsuit, get on the phone and do it verbally. Get off the phone. The minute you say that, okay, yeah, you're right, I think I screwed up here, that you have just lost your case in court. That'll be Exhibit A, evidence against you. Never admit liability. Now, a lot of people don't understand this. I'm in a field where if I admit liability in writing, it voids my malpractice policy. And it means that people can go after my house at that point. So no matter how much you may think it's your fault, and by the way, a lot of the times it's not your fault. Don't be too generous there. But never admit liability in writing. That could your lawyer will not like that if, God forbid, this ever does get to be a court case. If there's a problem with an invoice, deal with it before you send the invoice to the client. This is my little trick. Every once in a while, I do spend a little too much time on something, and I'm not going to bill it to the client because I don't really think it's ethical. I don't feel right doing it. But I want the client to know that time was spent. So I'll send a bill. I'll always do a detailed bill, 10 hours, and then underneath, less client courtesy, 1 hour, and I only bill 9. So they always, well, Cliff, what's the client courtesy? Well, when I look at this bill, I spent too much time researching the law on this. I really don't feel that it shouldn't have taken me that long, not after 38 years of doing it. I want you to know that I spent the time, but I have no intention of charging you for it. Boy, does that make you look good to the client. You weren't going to bill the hour anyway. But by doing it that way, you've sold the client, I'm looking out for you. If I really think that I've spent too much time, you will never be billed for that. That's the message that's there. And of course, maybe I only billed 8 hours. But that's the thing. It's always a good idea. Whenever you think you spend a little too much time, give the client a little courtesy. It also prevents them from asking because you've already taken it down. You've already written it off yourself without them having to ask you to do it. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't stop everybody, but a lot of the times when they see that, they say, well, he's already written this bill down. I'm not going to ask him for another half an hour off. That's piggy. I'm just going to pay it. That's what you want them to think. I could write a whole book on billing strategy. That's going to be my next program, I think, for this YouTube channel, is billing strategy. I could write a whole treatise on that. Okay, now, here's a specific thing. We're talking about dissatisfied clients. What happens when a client posts a negative review online? Okay, sooner or later, it's going to happen. Whenever people are looking at you, they look at your online social media, but they also look for bad reviews. And they're looking for bad ones specifically. They're not looking for good ones. They're looking for the bad ones. They're going to go to, we live in the world of Yelp.com. There's one for lawyers actually called Avvo.com, AVVO.com. There's I don't care what business or profession you are in, there's a review site somewhere. And sooner or later, some idiot's going to post a negative review on that site saying, I dealt with this guy, he's an idiot, he doesn't know what to do. Okay, how do you handle that situation? Okay, there's an old Spanish saying, revenge is a dish best served cold. Do not get emotional. Don't do anything for 24 hours. Do not do anything hasty because it's very easy to make mistakes here that may you look like a bigger idiot than the person who posted the negative review. Stay cool. Don't overreact. A little bit of law here. You cannot contact the review site and ask that the review be taken down. They will never do it. And there's a statute that actually protects them. believe it or not. As long as they did not contribute to the review in any way, they cannot be sued or be forced to take down anything that a third party puts up on their site. So don't even try to get the review removed. The websites will not do it, and they have every legal right not to do that. That's a waste of your time and money. What should you do? Well, first of all, wait 24, 48 hours before preparing any kind of response. If you can afford it, have your lawyer look at it, by the way. Because every once in a while, a negative review can be defamation. It can be libel or slander. And you might have a legal case against them if they said false statements against you. So Cliff Ennico was a lousy attorney. Well, I won't like that too much, but that's just an opinion, and you're always entitled to your opinion. Cliff Ennico, don't deal with Cliff Ennico. He's been sued 36 times for malpractice in the last year. That is a false statement of fact, and that is libel. I could sue them for that statement. Because it's assuming, of course, it's false, which it is. I've never been sued once in 38 years. Okay? So sometimes talk to your lawyer first. Have them look at the review because you may have legal rights against that person. You'd have to sue them directly. You can't go through the website. But you might be able to sue them for libel or slander. But wait 24 to 48 hours. Read the review carefully. In my experience, half of all negative online reviews are written by lunatics. They are. They're written by people, all right, they feel that they've been wronged, but they just want to just dump on the whole world and just flame your butt, okay? Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing. Let that stand. Because anybody with a brain who looks at this is going to see, wait, this guy's a real wackadoodle. Oh, man, this poor guy, having him for a client. I don't want that. By the way, I sometimes look at potential clients. I see what they do online. I don't want a potential client who has posted a negative review on another lawyer. I am not going near that person. I don't care how right he or she may have been. I am not going near that person. All right. That's one of the ways I screen out wackadoodles. If the review is what's the famous line from Macbeth? A tale full of sound and fury signifying nothing. A tale told by an idiot. That's the one you want to leave alone. Don't glorify it or justify it by responding. Otherwise, if the review was by a person who had a brain and who legitimately had a beef with you, here is the best response, and you can write this down. I am sorry to hear you were not satisfied with my services. Please contact me offline, and I'll do whatever I can to make things right. That's it. Don't engage. Now, you're doing two things here, one of which is a little sneaky. You're saying, I'm sorry to hear you were not satisfied with my services. Now, if I'm reading this as a stranger, I say, well, wait a minute. This guy didn't even know that the client was unhappy until the negative review was posted. Now, maybe that's not what happened, but it looks that way. It looks like you didn't even know that this person was unhappy until he saw the negative review. That makes that person look like a wackadoodle. Okay? The second part is, please contact me offline. I'll do whatever I can to make things right. Who's going to complain about that? The best reviews that I have online are, we got into a sticky situation, but Cliff handled it in a very professional manner. I couldn't be more satisfied. That's the best review of all. We had a problem, but he dealt with it well. That's the best review. Not everything went perfectly, right? We had a problem, but Cliff handled it beautifully. I couldn't be happier at the outcome. That's the best review you want, okay? And this tells me that you're that kind of person, okay? Again, maybe total baloney, but the fact is, it does send the right signal to the third person. Do not get into an online argument with a reviewer or get overly defensive. Even if you're right, it makes you look scary. Would you ever deal with a lawyer who sues his clients? Probably not. It's just not a good thing. Even if you're right, it's just not a good thing to do. Holy cow, if he doesn't like me, he's going to sue me. Ooh, we don't deal with this person. Okay, you don't like lawyers anyway, right? That just makes it even worse. Don't do that. And then last but not least, always ask satisfied clients to post positive reviews. Whenever a client says something nice to me in an email, I say, no, do me a favor, could you please say some nice things about me on social media? Because let's face it, if you're looking at reviews on Yelp and you see 100 positives and 1 negative, who are you going to believe? Okay? Well, you're still going to look at the 1 negative no matter what, because it's human nature to do that. But almost always it's a wackadoodle. You want to see the 100 positives. Get lots of positives out there. Online reviews are important. One of the best things that a client can do for you is give you a positive online review, but they won't take the time unless you ask for it. So make sure you ask for it. I always do that with satisfied customers, and I have a lot of good stuff online. Okay, let's talk about billing a little bit, because that's a key part of client relationships. Bill early and often. I know, that sounds so silly, doesn't it? Clients are much more likely to pay frequent small bills than a single massive one. For services rendered, $15,000. Are you just going to roll over and pay that sucker? I don't think so. You're going to ask some questions, aren't you? Right? I used to have a landscaper that did this, by the way. Great landscaper. I would never knock this guy. He's very good at what he does. But he would start working in April or May, and I would beg him to send me a bill every month. I had to be, well, I don't really have time. It's just me and my son and whatever. And okay, that's good. I don't want you to get upset, but please, I have the money, now. I could pay you, He wouldn't. What he did every December, a week before Christmas, before he left for Florida for the winter months, he would send a bill for services rendered 2017, $12,000. The week before Christmas, he would do this. And payable upon receipt. Forgive me, he was worth it. The $12,000 was a perfectly reasonable fee for a whole year's worth of landscaping. I'm not saying it wasn't, but come on, people. That's so in your face. The week before Christmas to send a big bill to someone. Scrooge didn't even do that to Marley, for crying out loud, or to his customers. Why, really, send bill every month. No matter how busy you get servicing your customers, always bill regularly. No matter how busy I get in my law practice, the last day of the month in the morning, you cannot get a hold of me. I am sitting at my computer and I'm doing my invoices for the month. And I don't stop until those things are printed out, envelopes typed, and out in the mail. If I don't bill every month, clients let their bills slide. If I don't bill every month, then they start. Clients always believe that all bills are net 30. You can say due upon receipt until you're blue in the face, but it doesn't matter. They don't read that. Oh, the bill's here. It's the 16th of the month. Okay, I got till next month to deal with this. That's how they look at life. So if you're late billing, they're going to be late paying, and before you know it, you start having a receivables problem, which you don't want. Always, always, always get some money up front. I don't care how small the matter is, I always ask for something up front. I want these people to know that this is not a friendly relationship. I want them to know, this is why we have PayPal. Okay, if they go, okay, well, I really need you to do this by tomorrow. Okay, here's my PayPal, here's my email address for PayPal. And add the 3.5% for the PayPal fee. It's 3.5% for PayPal right now. I don't know what it will be in the future, but always, always get some money up front. Always send detailed bills. I always do this. Don't make a client ask for it. Always send them a bill showing, on this date, I spent 2 hours, here's what I did. On this date, I spent 1 hour, here's what I did. Don't make the client ask for that. I always keep timesheets. I always do that for my clients. You never have to ask me for that. You always get it. Why? Because it keeps the discussion to a minimum. Okay? If a client feels that I spent a few minutes too much doing a particular thing, he's zeroed in on that thing, he's not looking at the entire bill. It makes your life a lot easier. Don't ever make a client ask for it, because it's a pain in the ass to do a detailed bill when you're in the middle of trying to get a deal closed for somebody else. Do them as a matter of course. Don't make the client ask for them. If you did spend too much time on product, give the client a courtesy reduction and show it on the invoice. That's my little trick. By doing that, you send the saying, oh, wait a minute, he's already written this down. Well, I'm not going to ask him to write it down further. That'd be too piggy. He spent a little too much time on this, but he did the right thing. He's giving that to me, and he's telling me that. I'm okay with that. That's the response 9 times out of 10. Here's a dirty little secret of billing. Bill the most amount of time on the activities the client finds most distasteful. Seriously, if I send a bill out, telephone conference with client 20 minutes, I always get pushback. Always. Well, Cliff, dude, you're gouging me. We were only on the phone for 5 minutes, man. Why are you billing me for 20 minutes? You're gouging me. No. Seriously, I have a stopwatch. I time my calls. I do timesheets. We were on the phone for 20 minutes. Trust me on this. I know it seems like 5 minutes because I'm such a fun guy to talk to, but it was 20 minutes that we were on the phone. No, seriously. I always end up writing time out. But when I send a bill out, drafting contract, 4.5 hours. I never get pushback. In fact, you know what? I get paid early. I often get paid before the 30 days is up because people hate that job, right? When somebody does your tax return, what's the first thing you do before you even read the thing from the accountant? You pay their bill, right? If you're like me, most people do, by the way. I have friends who are CPAs. They say their bills get paid on average within a week of the time that the tax returns are delivered because people just hate that job. They're so happy that it's done that they pay the person within a week, even though the bill's net 30. They could wait 30 days, but they don't. They pay it within a week. That's how they just want to get that off their plate. They don't want to have to think about it anymore. That's a good way. When you do billing, spend the most amount of time on bill the most amount of time on the thing that people find the most distasteful, and they're much more likely to pay earlier. It's a dirty little trick of billing. Also, for younger clients, for those of you working with millennials, never send bills just by snail mail. Send them by email as well. Okay. Believe it or not, I actually had this situation. I was working with a tech startup, a bunch of young guys out of New York City, and I had sent 2 bills, and neither of the bills had been paid. And I was surprised because the people are good people that I was dealing with. So I called the client. I said, "Dude, this is how you speak to millennials. Dude, just so you know, I sent you 2 bills, by the way, and I haven't got. Well, I never got anything from you." And I said, "Well, wait a minute." I said, "Well, I sent them actually to your home address." He goes, "Well, Cliff, I'm sorry, I didn't get them." And I said, "Wait a minute." He said, "How did you send them?" And I said, "I sent them by snail mail." He goes, "Well, I don't get snail mail in my apartment." I said, "Dude, in the lobby of your building, do you ever see, off to the side, is there a room with a lot of little metal boxes there?" "Oh, dude, is that where they're going?" I swear to God, this was the conversation. He did not know that the Postal Service does not deliver mail to individual apartments within a building. They put it in the mailbox. He did not know he had a mailbox. He says, "Dude, look at your key ring. Do you see that little metal key?" "Yeah, I was wondering, that's your key for your mailbox." He did not know. So now, seriously, does this sound weird? Trust me, it happened to me. So now, whenever I deal with younger people, I send the bills by email. That way I know they get them. Seriously, you got to do that with younger. Trust me on that. Don't just send a bill. People sit on their snail mail, especially if they use like a UPS postal box. They sometimes don't check that until like every other month. So if you're sending invoices to a UPS mailbox, you know that is going to be, or a PO box, that's going to be sat on for a long time. Okay, let's talk about deadbeats for a minute. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I have a whole video on dealing with deadbeats. It's on my YouTube channel. We spend into a lot. I actually have a whole slide on how to go medieval on somebody, which is a real cool slide. It gets downloaded a lot. The 6 steps of collecting overdue bills. Okay, whenever a client owes you money, rule number 1, stop working the minute a bill is past due. All big receivables problems start out as small ones that get out of hand. The minute a client is a day or 2 late, you stop working. What I do, right after I finish doing my bills for the month, I look at the bills I sent out last month and I see who hasn't paid. Everybody who hasn't paid gets an email right away. By the way, just to let you know, your bill is due today. If you have already sent it, please disregard this notice. Otherwise, I would greatly appreciate your sending it within the next 48 hours to ensure for future service. And if that bill is, if I don't receive the check by the end of the week, that person gets a phone call and I stop working. That's what I do. You've got to be ruthless here. This is where a little bit of ruthlessness comes into play. Never let a client let bad receivables pile up. Don't never do that. I know law firms that have clients that owe them for like 3 years worth of service. You cannot run a business that way. You simply cannot. Well, they do it probably because they're tech startups and it's kind of an investment on their part. They want to help these people along, and I totally get it. But you in the kind of business you have where you're a solo or a small office, you cannot afford to let bills get out of hand. Nip them in the bud. The minute a client goes late, stop and deal with it. Call them up. Contact the client immediately. Ask what's up. Try to negotiate a solution, either a payment schedule or a fee reduction. Get it in writing, and always put time is of the essence. That's magic language. That means, okay, I'll let you spread this out over 3 months, but I expect to see the check in my mailbox on the 1st of every month. Time is of the essence, which means that if it's on the 2nd, I stop working and I call my lawyer. That's what that means. Time is of the essence means I take this serious. I'm not going to let this slide. Make sure you do that. If the client still stonewalls you, they're not responding, have your attorney send a formal demand letter. This is a letter. You can send it yourself, but it's a lot more effective if it comes from an attorney's office. Most attorneys, by the way, will charge you a flat one hour fee, by the way, for that, just so you have an idea of the cost. This is not a huge bill that you're looking at here. Have it sent by your attorney, because that's serious. When they see that you've lawyered up, that is especially important. If the client is in a different state, get a local attorney to write the letter. Don't send a letter from Connecticut to a deadbeat in California. Get a local California. Let him know that you're coming after him on his home turf. That will scare him into settling and discussing the thing with you early. You got to get their. The first thing is you got to get their attention. And if they see that you've hired a local lawyer in their backyard, holy cow, this guy's coming after my house. I better deal with this. I always find that when people owe you money, they always have enough money to pay some people. They just can't pay them all. You got to be at the top of the list, the one that get paid. And for that, I will refer you to my Dealing with Deadbeats program, because I tell you exactly how to do that in that program. Okay, keep up the pressure. Make a nuisance of yourself if necessary. Sometimes people pay off creditors just because they're a bunch of nasty buggers, and they just want to get them off their back. We only owe, how much? Cliff's being a real jerk about that. Oh, yeah, how much? $50? Let's just write him a check. Let's get this thing done. Let's get done and over with. Do this. Sometimes people get paid off because of the nuisance value. Don't be afraid to be a nuisance. These people owe you money. They're threatening your livelihood. These are not good people. Don't treat them as nice people. Okay, last but not least, when and how to fire a client. Some clients are not worth calving, and you will occasionally have to fire them, just like you would fire an employee. Here are some of the candidates. Repeat offenders. Okay, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You ever hear that expression? Okay, all right, I gave you that thing once, but guy, this is not going to be a regular course of dealing. You're toast. You're out of here. You are without counsel. Clients whose conduct suggests moral turpitude is a legal phrase. You can look it up online, but basically, moral turpitude means something that shows you have bad character. So, for example, not all crimes are crimes involving moral turpitude. If you get a parking ticket or a moving violation, that just says maybe you're a bad driver, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person. Whereas if you commit fraud or embezzlement or something, those are the crimes that have moral turpitude. It shows that you're a bad apple, you're a bad character person. Clients whose conduct suggests moral turpitude are people that you should not be dealing with. Clients you would not accept an invitation to LinkedIn from. We get all these invitations to LinkedIn all the time on our LinkedIn profile, right? You say no to a lot of them, right? Don't do business with those people. Don't make them your clients. If you don't care enough about them to link in with them on LinkedIn.com, why are you doing business with them? I have to ask that question. That's a good client you want to get rid of. Clients you don't like. This is what I was talking about at the very beginning, where I say that if you truly start hating your clients, it's time to get out. Maybe change professions. I have to tell you, sooner or later, when you truly dislike a client, it turns into malpractice on your part. What happens is you put the client up, that guy Joe, I don't want to talk to him today. I'll deal with him tomorrow. You start putting it off. You start putting him at the bottom of the pile. The complaints get louder and louder. All of a sudden, you make a mistake because let me just get this stupid thing done for Joe, and you screw up. Okay, I see a lot of lawyers who fall into this trap. They say, I actually spoke to an attorney about a month ago. The only client who ever sued me for malpractice was somebody I couldn't stand. And that's why it happened. I started letting his stuff slide, and eventually I gave him a case that he could use against me. To use Richard Nixon's great phrase, I gave him a sword that he could use against me. Whenever you find yourself truly disliking a client, get rid of them. It's the best thing you could do for yourself and for the client. Look, we all have bad fits. Okay, every once in a while we always have bad fits. Not everybody's a perfect fit for me either. Okay, but when I see that I just don't like this person, I find a way to transition him to somebody else or her to somebody else. Because I know sooner or later, if I keep going on, I'm going to do something that's going to give this person a case against me if he doesn't have one already. Clients that keep you awake at nights. Send a formal termination letter in writing. Always send it by certified mail, return receipt requested. You want to be able to document exactly when the relationship was terminated. If the client owes you money, hold on to their files and other deliverables until you receive payment. In most professions, in most businesses, you can legally do that. Now, there are some where you can't, though. Talk to your lawyer first. So, for example, if you are a bookkeeper or an accountant, there are some very strict rules about when you can and can't turn your files over to a client that owes you money. So make sure you're familiar with those rules. But unless you're in one of those professions, most of the time you can hold on to client files and other things. You can even sell them to competitors sometimes, unless you signed an NDA, unless you signed a confidentiality agreement saying that you wouldn't do it. You might be able to peddle it on the street, or something to another client. Maybe. Talk to a lawyer first before you take any action like that. But in most cases you can. You have some leverage here. If the client wants to hire another professional, he needs your files, and you're not obligated to turn those over without at least getting a settlement of what they owe you. So here's my summary. Don't try to be all things to all people. You can't. Nobody can. Trust your gut when taking on new clients. If somebody comes on like a wackadoodle, trust your gut, get rid of them. You will thank yourself later. Get your contract language crystal clear, especially on when payment is due. That is the biggie. Communicate closely with your clients. Don't let a client relationship get too stale, because that's when people get crazy sometimes. You ever have a relationship in college? We didn't talk to the person for a while, and all of a sudden they started thinking all kinds of crazy stuff. Same happens with clients. Be friendly to your clients, but don't let them become friends. Always maintain a professional distance. Bill early and often. Nip past due payments in the bud before they grow. Don't let little receivable problems become big receivable problems. Don't be afraid to terminate problem clients. Even in a tough economy or a very competitive economy like we have here in the northeastern United States, there's plenty of work out there. You do not have to deal with wackadoodles. Trust. So that's it. This is one of my best-selling books. It's called Small Business Survival Guide. Basically, it's a collection of some of my best-selling columns that I've written for Creator Syndicate over the last 15 years. Some great stories here about the real world of small business management. But seriously, the best thing that I can offer you two things. One is this website, succeedinginyourbusiness.com. That's my website for my syndicated newspaper column, my blog, if you will. I have a lot of good stuff up there, but especially my YouTube channel, youtube.com. Search for Cliff Ennico. You have to actually search in my name in the search box. I've got 39 videos, soon to have more, including this program. On all aspects of the real world of running the small business. I talk about the stuff that's not in the books, is what I talk about. And they're all free. They tend to run between 60 to 90 minutes of your life. And I even have one called How to Sell Just About Anything to Just About Anybody. Now, coming from a lawyer, does that sound like snake oil? It's got almost 300,000 views. And I get emails from all over the world from people who've told me that it's changed their lives. So I will just leave you with that. And now let's open the floor to questions and answers. I appreciate your patience. Okay, guys, now you can speak up. Thank you, by the way, for being quiet about that. I know that's hard to do when you're doing a program like this, but I do appreciate it. Sir, go ahead.
What's that last thing you just said, the video?
How to sell just about anything to just about anybody. You'll know it the minute you look at my channel. I'm wearing this ugly purple sweater. It looks like I took a carpet from and just cut a hole in it and threw it over myself. If I had known this was going to be a YouTube viral video, I never would have dressed like that. But I tend to wear this color a lot when I do my videos. So, okay, anybody else? Questions at all about client management? Anything at all? It's pretty straightforward stuff. Have an attorney work on your client retention form. Is a good piece of advice that I could give you. Don't do that yourself. I mean, there's all kinds of good forms on the web, but have an attorney make sure that all the legal stuff is there the way it should be. You don't have to do with this, and this doesn't have to be a 10-page thing, but good contracts really do make good clients. 9 times out of 10, when a client starts playing games, it's because you gave them permission to do so by being vague in your contract about when things were going to happen. The more you can nail things down in a 2 to 3 page document, the less problems you have, the less BS there is. Hey, sir.
So you're starting a new relationship and you have your contract, and you don't want to start out negative and saying, you got to do this, you got to do this, I'm going to bring in a court. How do you find that balance?
Okay, so the question is, when you're starting a new relationship with someone, you obviously don't want to turn the client off either with too much legal mumbo jumbo. That's why I'm saying don't do this as a 10-page agreement, because that will scare them off. But first of all, what I do when I do the intake call with the client, the phone call, I kind of talk about all the things that are going to be in the retainer agreement, so that when I send the retainer agreement out, there's no surprise. I'm saying, listen, by law, I have to have this agreement with you. See, I'm a little luckier as a lawyer because we have to have retainer agreements with all of our new clients. We're required by law to have that. So I can throw that on the legal system. I can say, by law, I'm required to have this. Just so you know, all it does is spell out exactly what I've said on this conversation with you. Obviously, if you have any questions, whatever, call me immediately. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. And most times I don't get questions back. The only feedback I ever got, I have to say, the only negative feedback I ever got on my retainer agreement, for years I used to put language in there saying, especially for people who are forming an LLC, I had language that said that while I may accept payment from an LLC or corporation you have formed, I view the person signing this agreement as the client. And the reason I was doing that, obviously, is that, I want to get to their, if they really cause a lot of problems, I want to be able to go after their personal assets. I did get a lot of pushback on that particular concept, and I ultimately ended up taking it out of my retainer agreement. I can still do it anyway if I want to, but putting it in there was a turnoff to clients. Listen to your clients. I mean, if everybody's complaining about certain language in your retainer agreement, then soften it. By all means. I'm not saying it should be rigid, but don't be afraid to let the client know that this is a two-way street. A lot of clients think once I hand this off to Cliff, he's going to do everything, all the work, and it's going to be a perfect job. So when I come back at him, with 5 more questions, well, Cliff, why didn't you tell me about that at the beginning? Well, no, it's an ongoing relationship. The more I learn about this, the more questions I'm going to have, and there has to be a dialogue here. Make sure your client, not all clients know that this is a two-way street. That's why the cooperation clause, if it's properly drafted, will not be very offensive. It'll all be obvious. Oh yeah, well, obviously I have to return phone calls. I have to do. They're not going to think anything of it. It's all obvious, common sense stuff to them. To you, though, it gives you the right to terminate the contract if they don't. If they turn into a phantom. I mean, I know marketing people who say, see, marketing consultants are in a little different ballpark here than most of us. Any marketing people here, by the way? I should have asked that question up front. Not too many. Marketing people generally don't get paid until a deliverable is actually rendered. So they can actually spend 100 hours on a project and not get paid until the 100 hours are completed. And that's a bad situation to be in, just in general. So, I mean, I know marketing consultants that say that if I haven't heard from you within 30 days, your upfront retainer is forfeit. I keep it. It's non-refundable at that point. That gets the message across. You better return my phone calls. This is a priority. See, lawyer, I don't have to see, the nice thing about being a lawyer, one of the few nice things, I don't have to justify myself to my clients. If you're calling a lawyer, you know damn well why you're calling the lawyer. You don't have to ask, well, Cliff, why do I need a lawyer to do X, Y, and Z? You know why you need a lawyer. That's why you're calling me. Marketing people, however, are in a very different situation. Why do I need a marketing person? Well, why do I need someone to do my website? I can do that myself. My kid can do it. He's in college. He lives online. They have to justify their existence more than I do. As professionals, and that gets hard. I really feel for marketing consultants. I really do, because also what they do is so nebulous, too. They're the ones that I'm really focusing on when I say, let the client buy in. Don't just do what you think works or that you've done for your last 5 lawyer clients and expect that they're going to buy it. Get the client to buy in, so that way when they see it, oh, okay, it didn't look exactly like I thought it did. That's a different conversation than, holy crap, I look like Pee Wee Herman. Seriously, when he did that, my jaw dropped. I said, is this guy an idiot or what? This is what, I mean, I really thought that he had gotten what I was trying to accomplish with this website, and this thing was just totally out of the blue that he did. And again, it affected his mind. When he explained the situation, I said, well, all right, if I had known you were going to do that, I'd say, well, all right, let's give it a shot. Let's see how it goes. But when you did that, I mean, he really thought that I looked good. That was the frightening point. He actually thought I looked good. I said, dude, are you an idiot? I mean, no one's going to buy that, a lawyer that looks like that. Seriously, have you ever seen, I tell lawyers sometimes, whenever in doubt, do not put your photo on your website. If you have a face that frightens small children, do not put it on your, no, seriously, there's no law that says you have to have your photo on your website. Most people like to know who they're dealing with. I totally get that, but have it professionally done. Don't just stick, a selfie up there, or worse. I mean, I actually did a deal just recently with the attorney on the other side. When he sent me his first email, how you can put a photo next to your email, he had a photo of an Imperial stormtrooper from Star Wars. The helmet, the guys with the thick helmets and stuff. Now, maybe he was trying to send me a signal that he's a real badass. But I said, dude, this is a lawyer with a cartoon as his image. I mean, it does affect your credibility. Seriously, get feedback from people. We used to be years ago, he's long since retired, but we used to have an ophthalmologist in the town where I live. That's an eye surgeon, someone who works on your eyes, right? And he was great. I mean, he was brilliant. I mean, he was my ophthalmologist for a while. I have some issues with my eyes. But whenever, he always used to take this ad out in the local paper, and he had eyes like Marty Feldman. Remember Marty Feldman from Young Frankenstein, the eyes that bug out 3 feet? And that was his photo, right? And this guy's an eye surgeon, So I remember one time, he was doing something. He was working on me. He said, "Oh, Cliff, forgive me. You're kind of a small business expert. I've been taking that ad out in the local paper for years. It doesn't seem to be pulling for me. Do you have any idea what I'm doing wrong? How do you tell a guy who's got a laser focused on your retina that he's butt ugly and you should take his photo out of his ad? How do you do this? Even I'm not that good." Okay? How do you do that? So eventually somebody got the word. He did eventually take his photo out. Somebody got through to maybe a relative or something, say, "Get rid of the photo. You're scaring the crap out of people with that." You look like he was going to grab the eyeballs out of your head and do them while you wait, that kind of thing. Seriously, I'll make myself available for another 10 or 15 minutes if people have, questions that they want to ask offline, or if you have legal problems or something like that. It's best not to do that with a video camera running. But I really do appreciate your patience, and if I can help any of you out, this is just one of the best ways you can get a hold of me. I also have cliffennico.com, which is that's my law firm website. It'll answer 90% of the questions you have about what I do for folks. So thanks again for coming out. Enjoy this beautiful fall evening.